You are listening to Fanning the Flames, the OG Suns podcast that is for the fans, you guys, by the fans, us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back into another episode here of Suns Planet Pod, not fanning the flames. Shout out to Justin, though, for that great intro and John's great voice. But welcome back to Suns Planet Pod. I'm your host, Bruce Velez, with Jake here as well. Jake's got no camera on today, but he does have that beautiful Suns Planet Pod's podcast little image there for all you guys to know that it is him. Jake, how are we doing today?
We're doing well, minus I got to figure out how to get these things going the right way. Apparently, we're not used to playing nice in the studio together, so that this is I got to get these overlays down. So,
yeah, we got obviously you guys can see the new background we have, combined with the other Bright Side shows to kind of make this a little bit easier so we can have obviously the templates and stuff, because StreamYard, as Jake and I have discussed here on the podcast, is a little outrageous with their pricing and stuff like that. So with that being said, we are here and everything like that. John is also here in the chat, chatting up, having a good time. Jake is taking over the overlays and stuff like that. But as you guys know, the Phoenix Suns had a big offseason, lots of changes that went under place. And recently we've been able to see those changes take place with the Suns having their preseason games. They played in 4 games, 2 versus the Lakers, 2 versus the Nets, which I don't know about you, Jake. I personally don't like that we're only playing 2 teams. I'd rather be able to see other squads. And maybe this is just like an NBA thing in general, but with them playing the Nets and the Lakers, we did see some great things. Obviously, they went to China to play the Nets, but it was good to see at least some different lineups with the Suns playing the Lakers the first time, obviously, with their starters, and then their last game kind of going with their Exhibit 10s and two-way guys.
Yeah, it was interesting. Well, first off, let me say, so you're also a Celtics fan at heart as well, and
Yep.
I believe it was Joe Manzula, right, as the coach?
Yeah, Joe Mazzulla.
Yeah, and he said, I hate preseason, and I got to be honest, that I'm right there with it. If there's a preseason that I'm less interested in, I don't know what would it be. I understand the purpose behind it, but it's just, it's hard to get excited when I know these guys aren't excited. And there's really, with the exception of, a couple of guards, Butler and Goodwin, there's we know what the roster is going to be, right? And so it's not like where with the NFL, it's like, oh, I wonder if this guy who's drafted in the 6th round is going to make the cut. I really like him because I watched him in such and such college. That you get a little bit more of that to see if like who the supposed good guys are in camp that might actually make the squad through preseason, games. Not so much with the NBA. But I will say a little like a fun fact. Apparently, I was at a conference in Palm Springs not too long ago, and it was we were checking in as the Suns were checking out. And apparently all those players get late checkouts until 4:00 in the afternoon, which is why anyone that arrived before me had to wait in the lobby. And they were not happy about it. But then they saw a bunch of 7-footers walking out. I think the Lakers were there too. Yeah, they understood. As the hotel was trying to transition from NBA preseason game and all the support staff that would be staying there as well to, hey, there's a conference at this location. We got to try and move them on out. Interesting little note there. But in terms of the preseason, I mean, I like the vibe. Everything looks like they're the guys. There's a try hard attitude now that we have not seen for years. What do you think?
I would completely agree. And that kind of gets us into our first topic. So I'll ask you the first question here, Jake, because we've been watching this preseason, obviously these past 4 games, them in China, maybe not as keen, stayed in, locked in. Us on the East Coast, maybe a little bit easier, but for the people over in the Valley, waking up early at 4 or 5 in the morning for those games, definitely very difficult. But from watching the preseason, at least, what were some of your main takeaways from these games? It could be a certain player that stood out to you, certain plays, the functionality of the team, like you mentioned, the trying hard on defense. What really stuck out to you for this Suns team in those 4 games that maybe you didn't see last year or, is very impressive?
Yeah, well, I think three things would go into it. First, as I kind of mentioned, with the style of play, the better alignment, shall we say, with this team versus last couple of years team. It seems like it seems like night and day difference. And again, it's preseason compared to the last 2+ years of regular season and playoffs. That it's weird that I feel like the team tries harder in this preseason game than we did when we were getting swept by the Timberwolves. Now, it's obviously an exaggeration, but I can just tell from Suns Twitter that there's an excitement of, hey, we've got guys diving for loose balls that are playing aggressive defense that, like, if they make a mistake, they try and actually run back and fix it. So just the whole attitude of the team. I mean, that's really why a lot of Suns fans fell in love with Colin Gillespie last year. It's like, look at this guy trying to win games for us or with the team. Whereas it seemed very much like Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant, especially, we're just like, we go out there, we do our thing, and let the chips fall where they may. And that's just, as the fan base was seeing that our championship window was not there, it was harder and harder to see that from, some of the best players in the league. At least that's what we were told to believe for Bradley Beal for a while. So in terms of team energy, definitely looks a lot better. In terms of kind of individual play, Malawach, our new center, I tell you what, when we first drafted him, I thought, okay, I get a little nervous when I hear the draft kind of preview and review of these players as raw, athletic, but raw. And because I'm like, we had a lot of that during the decade of despair, and where it's like, Dragon Bender, raw player. Can he learn how to move his body? But I will say I've been very impressed. I mean, it very much helped. As you mentioned, we had to play the Lakers multiple times. Hey, Malawach looked better than Ayton, and Ayton's been in the league for a while. That's how crazy it was. Now, do I think Malawach is going to start or anything like that? No. I think, he might, depending on Mark Williams' health. But I'm impressed with his starting point for being so young, kind of relatively new to the game. But just, again, the hustle that you see from a big is impressive. And so I was really liking what I was seeing there. I guess one kind of negative would have been I'm butchering the name, Nigel Hayes Davis.
Yeah, that would be Nigel Hayes Davis.
Okay, thank you. Oh my God, I like that you have to tap the mic. But no, I think I convinced myself that he was going to be like the next PJ Tucker and this guy that was great in Europe and then and came in and showed everyone he truly belonged. Haven't seen that yet. Doesn't mean it won't happen. And again, just preseason. But I was expecting more of a splash from kind of the relative unknown. But maybe I oversold him in my own head. So what about you?
So I agree with a lot of your takes. I think ultimately the main takeaway for me, like you said, was kind of the giving an ass on defensive side, right? Like they actually care. They show that they want to fight on that end. And it was clear as day from Jordan Ott's kind of introductory press conferences and stuff like that the Suns would be more bought in on the defensive side of the ball. But obviously, as we've heard from these last couple of years, we have to kind of see it with our own eyes before we can actually kind of believe it with these Suns teams, as we've been looking at, teams of rosters with just names and thinking we could be at these high points, but ultimately these last couple of seasons we haven't been able to see that product be put out there on the court. And guys like I think Dylan Brooks, who, like you mentioned, hustled for those loose balls and stuff like that, bringing that kind of defensive energy for this team, kind of reinvigorating it for guys like Devin Booker, who have been wanting to see this for the Suns for these last couple of seasons, I think is only going to just make the fans buy into more, but also the team buy into it more. You mentioned with Kevin Durant, with Bradley Beal, it was kind of guys just kind of wanting to do their own thing with this Phoenix Suns team. And I feel like this Suns team now is a collective unit, specifically with getting some of these younger guys in as well and buying into those depth pieces. Like you mentioned, the Colin Gillespie, who was given a rat's ass last year, the Osa Iguodaros, the Ryan Dunns, even this year with the guys like Kaman Malawach, Rasheer Fleming, Kobe Bryant. These are all guys that want to make an NBA impact and are fighting to make that NBA impact. And it's clear as day when they come out on the court that they're playing with that passion, they're playing with that hunger. Maybe something that we did see with some of those players last year, but maybe not as effectively as fans we could see it because they weren't giving it all on both sides of the ball. So I think that is probably the main takeaway. I know maybe Suns Twitter has been overreactionary a little bit of this Suns defense. I've seen some people saying they make maybe like a top 10 defense. I don't necessarily know if that's the case, but I definitely think they're going to be a lot more effective than they were last year, where they were a bottom 3 defense, which could clearly change the direction of how this team really does look. You mentioned some players as well. Kamal Malawach looked like an absolute beast in this preseason. Personally, for me, I'm high on Oso Ighodaro this season, so I'm hoping he can kind of really shed some light going into the year. I know in the preseason he didn't really have that much of an explosive one, but I'd really like to see what he can do for this Suns team, kind of playing into that power forward / center role for this squad. And ultimately, I think the main takeaway from this entire offseason is that Jordan Ott looks to be the head coach for the Suns, like the Suns have said for these couple of months, that they're not just going to have him kind of come in and come out. This is for the best of the team. And it's clear as day that with Jordan Ott, that you can see that the players are happy, but also the fans are happy. And I think that this team realistically with this head coach is going to see some great promise in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's, I wrote an article recently for Brightside, and I was a Debbie Downer in it, I'll admit. But it's just it's probably a little bit more because I'm transitioning from football, interest to basketball interest, so I'm trying to get myself fired up. And as I mentioned before, it's random, but I'm a diehard New Orleans Saints fan, and they were mortgaged to the hilt. They keep restructuring contracts, a very NFL-y type thing, to the point where they are actually double the next closest team for next year in dead cap money, which means they are going to be paying people to not be on the roster next year, and it's just sunk costs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that reminds me a little bit of a gentleman named Bradley Beal, who we will be paying roughly $20 million to for the next 5 years on the Suns roster. And the Saints, in terms of, they won the Super Bowl forever ago. I think it was 2010. I could be off on that. But maybe 2011, but and then they continued to try to keep winning. Obviously, they had a little bit of a championship window there to continue to compete, but eventually Drew Brees did retire. He just didn't have it anymore. Sean Payton, the head coach, stayed around for one more year. Then he left and retired for a year. Now he's with the Broncos, and the Saints ownership can convince themselves that there was enough pieces left over from a team to continue to try and compete. And so they continued to restructure contracts, put money in to later years. And now they are 1-5 before they're before they kick off here in about 30 minutes to play the Bears. It's not going to go well. What I can say in comparison to, this year compared to last year's team is they're trying hard. It looks like there's players that actually are fighting for their future of their careers. And I think we're going to see that a lot more with this team that, as good as Dylan Brooks is as a defender, he might not have a lot of years left in the league in terms of like a grand scheme. I mean, he doesn't have a decade plus, I don't think, he's and some of these guys, Jalen Green, he was supposed to be the guy in Houston. We'll see if he can be one of the guys in Phoenix. So there's a few of these guys that need to prove themselves. And of course, obviously all the young guys, but they need to prove themselves to the league, whether they're in Phoenix or not, to get another contract, another sizable contract. And while they're trying to do that, it should be a lot more fun to at least watch, to see the fight from the team. But we might be at the very beginning of a tough few years. And I don't think we're cracking that, championship window back open anytime soon. But it's weird to say that, but I feel like this is true for a lot of the Suns fan base right now. I'm more excited to watch, even though I feel like we have a much lower likelihood of being, deep playoff run competitive. I still think there's a chance we could make it, maybe make the first round and see where the chips fall. But I don't know. What about you? I mean, is it like, have you come to grips to it, or are you a believer?
So I fall in the same boat with you, Jake. I completely agree. I think that kind of with those expectations from last year and from these previous teams of having these higher stakes, a lot of Suns fans kind of saw that brighter path and had those expectations kind of let down. I remember last year specifically, starting off the season, 7 or 8-1, Suns fans were on that cloud nine, really high atmosphere. And then November, December came in, the injuries completely wrecked this team, and then we saw the actual reality of this true Suns squad. And I feel like you mentioned, even if the roster still has those question marks, the fit of Jalen Green, the uncertainty of Mark Williams, some of these rotational guys or younger guys having to stick to make an impact, to be vital pieces for the growth of this squad, to prove to Devin Booker that we can still build in the next couple of seasons. I do think they will be better than this past season. I do have them, a little bit of a spoiler, with a higher win percentage than last year, getting 2 more wins, I believe. I think I have them getting 38 this year coming into the season, and ultimately have them falling in at the 10 seed in the Western Conference, just lastly team in the play-in, still able to make some noise. I still think that teams are very doubting the Suns. I know their over under win total is 31.5, I believe, and I think they'll be able to crush that and be able to get to that standard as well. I personally do like this Suns team. I'm very bought in to the direction that they're going to go, even if it's not the best team on paper, even if there are games where we are going to lose. There's going to be moments where the Suns are down 10 at halftime and they're going to come out like they want to win that game. And that's something that we didn't see at all last season. There's going to be times where we see the Suns up 15 in the fourth quarter and they're not going to let up the gas pedal and let the team come back. And I think those are like key things that are going to change and make the fans actually invested in the team, because they know that when they're watching the team play, that at some point the team can't just fizzle out and just completely go out the window. They actually are going to show that confidence every single minute.
Yeah, I think, when I think of where we were before the Kevin Durant trade, I felt like there was a culture that was building, and I thought it was pretty organic, of kind of the little engine that could, coming out of the Suns bubble, and then, Chris Paul's interest in working with Booker. We had Mikal, we had Cam, we had Ayton, and there was a lot of potential growth. There were some good veteran players like a Jay Crowder. And obviously we ended up going on some runs, but I mean, just the vibe in the arena of the games I went to, the players kind of, dancing around, feeling good, telling jokes, and that if they, if some other team did come out and take a swing at them, they were going to fight back. And whereas it felt a little bit more, in the last couple of years, like, again, it started with Durant, but it's not only on Durant for sure. But it just felt like we traded in, sold the culture, and we brought in mercenaries that just, okay, we're here to try and win games, and they couldn't make it work. And it was hard to then, like, I'm not saying you want to see Kevin Durant dive for a ball into the stands, but it does endear you to the fan base. And I've seen it's funny watching. Mr. Darth Void is in the chat. He had a fantastic back and forth. If any Suns fans want to go check that out on Twitter, where it feels like, Darth Void, to quote Forrest Gump, he made his peace with God a little bit with Kevin Durant, where there was an argument, or not even an argument. It was a discussion of team stands versus player stands, and as John pointed out, a player stand, if your favorite player on the team loses, it's because the team didn't put enough help around your favorite player. And if they win, it's because your favorite player carried them. Whereas a team stand kind of lives and dies. Hey, we want the best for Kevin Durant when he was here, but we want the whole team. We want the whole franchise. We want the whole community to feel like a part of that. And it's a little bit more inclusive. And so I think that's what we're going to we hit reset. We realized we lost the culture, and we're going to try and rebuild that. It's tough for somebody like a Devin Booker, but it looks like he's taking it all in stride. And as I reiterate in the article, and I know a lot of people just always, it's important to hear it. He has always continued to say, I don't want to leave. I like it here. I want to keep fighting hard here. So it's great to hear. It's just got to be a little bit tough for him to be like, all right, hit reset. Let's do this again.
No, I completely agree. And I love how you brought up John's conversation with Kevin Durant, because I thought that he handled that perfectly. Obviously, Durant has been at John's neck in the past before when he has been on the Suns, obviously disagreeing. And I think John's ability to explain to Kevin Durant how he perceives it, but also how many people in the Suns fan base also perceive it, was able to resonate with Durant for him to agree with him, and ultimately ended the conversation in one of the better responses, I would say, for John and Kevin Durant at the end of it, which I think was very great to see. And like you mentioned, Jake, you being in the stadium, I unfortunately have not had the pleasure to travel to, now it is, what is it called? The Mortgage Center, MMC. I don't know what Matt Ishbia now has called it, but the old PHNX Arena, I have not been able to, Footprint Center, whatever you would like to call it, I have not been able to go there. But I bet you this season, and specifically from the first home preseason game, you could tell from the crowd that they were getting amped. They were getting inside of things. They were feeling the energy that was being presented there, specifically from Kaman Malawach, from some of those other young pieces. And I think that was a very great spot for the Suns. So that leads us into my next question for you, Jake, here, which kind of goes into the preseason here. And who has surprised you the most in this preseason, and why for the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to be Malawach again, just because of the expectation of him being so raw, and I was just like afraid, like, are we doing what I felt like every team was doing during the Shaquille O'Neal era, like random 7-footer, you can play on our team, just stand in front of him and don't let him bully you. And no, Malawach has some talent. Like, he's not just a big body, but like, I was not expecting him to come out and shoot threes and be halfway decent at it. I was not expecting him to block DeAndre Ayton's dunk attempts. I was not expecting Ayton to dunk, attempt to dunk, first off, but I was not expecting Malawach to do it. And he's got that little, I'm sure a lot of Suns fans have seen that clip of Ayton going for a dunk and Malawach kind of flying around. But, obviously the play ended up with Ayton laying it in because that's how he prefers to score. But I don't know, was it just me, or did you kind of get a little Sean Marion flashback with how quickly Malawach jumps up and then lands and jumps right back up again? Like, it's impressive to see a big man that's not kind of slow and plodding.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And as obviously from Malawach, you mentioned the kind of uncertainties with him, obviously being a rawer talent, but also the fact that he just picked up basketball a couple of years ago as well. So he's obviously transitioning and learning the game. I do know that they did say around the draft, or I believe it was around the summer league, there was a quote that came out saying that Malawach obviously very comparative to a player in Joel Embiid, obviously a little bit of a rawer prospect coming, learning the game of basketball a little bit later in his career, where I obviously don't want to put those expectations to a guy in Kaman Malawach, but they said that he is better at his point in his career than Embiid was just those years. And obviously Embiid dealt with those injuries, had some time to kind of get adjusted to the league before he was able to pan out. But it just gives you that intrigue for Malawach. And you can already see it on the court, like you were saying, Jake, having those great defensive instincts right immediately on the play, getting that immediate rip to disrupt DeAndre Ayton, getting that block immediately in the game, and just implementing himself to being a force and a main piece for this Sun squad, which I was very, very excited to see, especially in front of that home crowd. You have to be able to captivate those fans immediately and be able to showcase that. And he did that on his first game. And then you mentioned I don't know if you saw his post-game press conference with Amanda Plugard, but he had a fantastic one where he has that famous quote where he says, "Tired is only in the mind." And I think that is just a great mindset, specifically for an 18, 19-year-old prospect to be coming in, specifically knowing that he has so much against him that he has to work to be at his best, and he's willing to overcome all of those hardships to be the best player and to fit in for this squad. And I think if he pans out for the Phoenix Suns, I think they can get what they wanted with that number 1 overall pick in DeAndre Ayton, which is this game-changing center for Devin Booker. That's not only going to aid his game on the offensive end, working in those pick and rolls and being able to make the offensive easier and more sound for the Suns team, but also on the defensive end where he can be that rim deterrent, that shot blocker, that paint beast the Suns have clearly lacked these last couple of seasons since they've had gone off with DeAndre and trying to fill that void in with guys like Yusuf Nurkic, Mason Plumlee, and Nick Richards. Which is just crazy to say those 3 names comparative to Kaman Malawach.
Yes. No, and I love that attitude for him. I mean, obviously the college game, nowhere near as many games as it is in the pro leagues, and he's going to need that. I mean, yeah, he can't be the tired one. The tired one is a LeBron James getting ready for another flight out, and at 40 years old, and that's when you're like, okay, it's a little harder to keep my conditioning up anymore. And so, Malawach, the hope is that he's building his conditioning as his peak athleticism now. But it's going to be tough, and the rookie wall is a real deal. And I think, for example, like I don't travel anywhere near as often as these guys, but I don't know if you're the same kind of person I am. Like when you fly across the country, you're kind of tired and you're not peak yourself. And these kind of guys are expected to go out and, you got to go out, play 20, 30 minutes of high value basketball. And it's great that he's like, hey, you know what? That's part of the process. I need to feel tired playing too hard. And so I can kind of break through to that next level and find that next gear. Can he be the next Jeff Green, an important role player, a historic role player on a competitive team? We can only hope. That was Jeff Green.
No,
I
I like that from John, obviously implementing the jokes here and there. But yeah, Malawach, I think, is kind of that main impressive piece from the Phoenix Suns preseason. I'd also like to give a little nod to Rasheer Fleming, especially in that last game. His just connectiveness to be kind of where the Suns need him is just so integral, and he does all those little things. I vividly remember that one play from the Lakers game where he saved that loose ball after going and giving that shot contest at the rim, but then going to save the ball, which then led into some good points down the line for the Suns and transition there. And that's just like, once again, something that we did not see last season from any of these wings, from any of these players. We mainly only saw it from guys like Josh Okogie and Cody Martin. And once again, to compare those names, some veteran role players that were just plug and play pieces to some of these younger guys is just crazy to say, because the Suns didn't have these types of roles on their squad. It was just all offensive scorers, some rebounders here and there. And it was just kind of like a this combination of players, roles, and I think, in my opinion, a mess of what the Suns had in their roster and in their depth chart. But now this season, it looks like they've actually identified what roles they need to thrive in this, faster pace offense with Jordan Ott, in this great defensive scheme that Jordan Ott is going to be playing and using to disrupt other offensive scorers. And I think Rasheer Fleming, similar to how you talked about Nigel Hayes-Davis having a little bit of a slump, I would say that going into this season, I was a little higher on Nigel Hayes-Davis. I did have them above the depth chart, but I could see leaning into the season, him and Rasheer Fleming kind of competing, maybe even with the Royce O'Neal at some points, for that kind of backup small forward, power forward spot. And maybe throughout the season, if the younger player is rising and looking a little bit better, we could see Rasheer Fleming take over that role over from some of those guys for them to be possible trade candidates.
Yeah. Well, and let me ask you, we've talked a little bit about some of the young guys we're excited about, especially on Malawach, the Malawach. But are you am I the only one? Maybe I'm just reading too much into the tea leaves, but Jalen Green, not going to be ready for opening night, right? Mark Williams, practicing, but not playing in the preseason games because they want to keep him fresh and they know his injury history. Any concern that it's clear that these guys are just not going to fit in, way too early of a take, or because you see Dylan Brooks playing hard, and you see, a lot of the young guys buying in. Grayson Allen's having fun again. It's nice to see the man smile. He's aged so much since he's come to the Valley. Big Meal O'Neal, he's having a good time. But Mark Williams, Jalen Green, still a wild card, but a little nervous coming into the season.
I would say I'm a little not as nervous as maybe some people might be, or maybe as you have been. I wrote about this for Brightside when I talked about who's more important for this Suns team to make their debut, Jalen Green or Mark Williams. And ultimately, I do think that the Suns don't necessarily need them as much as we may think. Obviously, for the start of the season, we would like to see the best product out there to see how well these guys can work together. But I do think the Suns have some time, right? Like, this year, they're clearly not a playoff team. They're not pushing to be a playoff team, to be a top-tier contender. So I think they should take those precautionary reasons to bring these guys back, because Mark Williams has dealt with injuries his entire career, and I feel like it's really stunted his ability to thrive in the Phoenix Suns or in the NBA. So for the Suns, I feel like keeping him till he's fully 100% and not rushing him so that he can be at his best is only for the benefit of the Suns, specifically because they have that depth in the front court. Obviously, Malawach is still a rookie. He's obviously going to be playing some backup minutes, but Nick Richards can kind of fill in for that backup role. They also have Oso Ighodaro, who can play some of those minutes comfortably. So I don't really see it being that much of a glaring issue for the Suns. I see it more of an issue with Jalen Green's transition, obviously, as that's still a big question mark for the Phoenix Suns on will he fit, and if he does fit, how well will he thrive within this team? Or if he doesn't fit, what does that look like for the Suns having a little bit of a non-fit and a weirder contract viewed in the NBA side of scale of things? But I think for Jalen Green, obviously he's been healthy the last 2 seasons, so coming into Phoenix dealing with an injury is a little weary, I will do say. But I do think for Jalen Green that there's no rush for him to be back into the system, because we can clearly see that with Grayson Allen and Devin Booker that they can still provide some good offense. And I think that for the benefit of the Suns, just waiting until everyone is healthy is key. I feel like rushing these guys or potentially just trying to see the fit for the first couple of games isn't really as worth it comparative to having them be healthy for the season, because I do necessarily think that Jalen Green could be a long-term fit, but if he does thrive within this system, he could also be someone used as a trade candidate down the line, and I still think the Suns have that in the back of their head.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I really like your take on Williams. I mean, we do have so much depth and young depth at that. I mean, Oso can play the 5, and obviously Malawatch is there, and you got Nick Richards that nobody wanted to take off our hands, but I mean, I think everyone would at least agree he's a solid role player, backup big, and can play for anyone in the league. The Jalen Green thing, the vibe, for me, it just feels off so far. I hope it changes, but. I mean, what were some of the things we were hearing media availability day and then pressers, and stories since? It's like, oh, he's working on his mid-range game. Well, that's not what we need you to do, Jalen. That's you should be a better 3-point shooter. You're below league average. You should be stronger at taking it to the paint and drawing contact and using that athleticism. And it seems like, I don't know, like he's just not. Maybe he's just. It's funny. I still remember I was a big DeAndre Ayton defender in terms of like media skills, because he just always seemed genuinely curious and happy to answer questions. And people would be like, he's not taking it seriously enough. We need like an angry guy. And then people will also be like, Devin Booker and Kevin Durant don't say anything in these interviews. So like it's always you're hated by some group of the fan base, right? Like they're going to be pulling these words apart. Is Jalen Green just not, doesn't really care about the media side of things, or do you think that he's just or do you think there might be something to the fact that he's just maybe not thrilled to be here?
I personally think that he isn't really thrilled to be here. Obviously, looking at where he is in his career, he's been competing to be a top tier scorer coming out of high school, was that prolific scorer. And then in the NBA, with his inconsistencies, to be able to keep his shooting splits, I guess, efficient. He's obviously had those conversations where he isn't really viewed as that number one scorer. I also think, once again, as a young player, you'd rather go to a team where you can see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. And for Phoenix, like we've kind of mentioned, I don't necessarily know if that path is truly here with Devin Booker, but we could see that. But to kind of counter your statement, I think he does need to get a little bit better at that mid-range game. I do think we're going to see him kind of using that to his advantage for his ability to score. I do think his 3-point shot does need to get a lot better and to be more consistent as well. But I think we're going to see Jalen Green play a role for the Suns that they wanted Bradley Beal to play in the past, which was the slasher. I know for Bradley Beal, in the 2 seasons, they had multiple roles for him. They had him at first being this playmaker and this facilitator for the offense. That didn't work with Frank Vogel. Then they had him trying to be this Drew Holiday type of player, according to Mike Budenholzer.
Jalen Green could be a Drew Holiday?
No, that obviously didn't work out. Then they had Bradley Beal trying to be this combo guard off the bench, I think, and then they had him trying to be a slasher as well. I think that for the Suns here, Jalen Green fits the mold that they wish that they could have used Bradley Beal in more. So I do think they'll have a little bit more success in that, because I do think Green's ability to cut to the basket and being a high-flying athlete with his ability to dunk, we've seen in the past him put monstrous slams and monstrous posters on people, that his downhill aggression is going to be a key for him in thriving in this offense. Once again, though, I just don't know necessarily how that meshes well with Devin Booker, but I do think we will see him have some success within this offense, even if it's not to the greatest success that the fans would like to see.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because maybe he takes it to the level of, hey, I don't have to try and do all the creation of offense on my own, and which they really left a lot. Well, they did leave a lot in his lap, and then they didn't. When they realized they were putting too much on him, you would see like a Fred VanVleet step up and say, hey, I still got a little bit left in the tank. Let me show you. Or they would just try and work through the post and work through Şengün a little bit more. But maybe with having Booker really be the, hopefully this year, right? He's going to be the guy for sure. There's no Chris Paul. There's no Kevin Durant. It's for sure him. And Green will just take out his rage against Houston on the basket and just realize, hey, I don't have to hold anything back. I don't need to leave something in the tank for the end of halves. I can just go crazy whenever I want, and just play kind of more of a team ball without having to feel like, oh shoot, I better make sure I'm ready to take those last second shots, because all of a sudden the Suns will have some options there and to kind of assist them in that. And so yeah, I mean, at least that's what I'm hopeful for. It's interesting too, because I think as We approach the NFL trade deadline. I mentioned this in my article too, that the decisions are going to have to be made. And one thing that is going to be interesting is that we talked about, we already like the spirit and the hustle of this Suns team, but I think we will have tradable assets come trade deadline. And it'll be, okay, this is a more exciting brand of Suns basketball. These guys are buying into the alignment, but does a Grayson Allen have more value somewhere else? Does a Royce O'Neal? Does a Nick Richards? Does Jalen Green? Does Mark Williams, show out enough? Obviously, we're not signing him to an extension right now because of his injury history. There's no reason to commit, especially when we've got a couple of young bigs behind him. So it'll be interesting to see how much of this team is still on the team post trade deadline. But do you think talk about one of our predictions? I guess we can transition to there. And you already talked a little bit about the wins, but do you think how much of this team do you think is going to be the same? I'll just say post, not obviously not next year, but let's just say post trade deadline.
I do think that they have the availability, especially now not being scraped up into that second apron, to have that more flexibility on the trade market. And I do think that a lot of the players on this team will also present themselves to be valuable on the trade market as well. Two of those players I think that kind of really stick out that were maybe as well on the trade market towards the end of the offseason were Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. We kind of touched on Rasheer Fleming and Nigel Hayes-Davis kind of being in that wing room, but obviously with Ryan Dunn and Dylan Brooks there as well, it is a little clogged with Royce O'Neal being in that rotation, fighting for those 3s and 4s. So I do think one of them will be moved, and it seemingly would likely be Royce O'Neal, as he is, I believe, on like a $8 to $10 million contract, which is very tradable. He still provides solid scoring off the bench. Maybe not as great of a 3-and-D role player as he was in the past because he has gotten a little bit older. The lateral quickness has caught up to him a little bit, but he can still be effective as I believe, a perimeter defender, and can still be utilized as maybe like a 7th, 8th man for some championship team if they do see the value in him. And then similarly, Grayson Allen, I know last year his shooting numbers were down, but the previous year before he got the extension, he had his best 3-point shooting numbers in his career. And if he can get back up to those shooting splits, specifically working in the starting lineup with Devin Booker and maybe not being in as much of a hindered role with the other guards, Tyus Jones and Bradley Beal being there, trying to clog up that rotation, I do think he will have a brighter spot. And my main takeaway with Grayson Allen is to kind of keep an eye on Kobe Brea, because I do think he is going to prove to be better than the 2-way contract that he was given, similar to a guy in Colin Gillespie, where if injuries do come into play, he will get some time with the Suns. And if he can prove he can be a mainstay on this rotation, and the Suns prove that, hey, maybe we're not as competitive as we were, they could look to sell off a guy in Grayson Allen, convert a guy in Kobe Brea to that final standardized contract, and ultimately look to flip Grayson Allen, I believe, $16 million or $17 million contract to another team where he could be, a valuable 6th or 7th man, or maybe even that final rotation scorer in that starting 5 to be a vital piece for those teams. Nick Richards, I still think, could hold some value as a backup big. It's going to be interesting to see when Mark Williams comes back, how that rotation does look. Do they use Oso Ighodaro as a 4/5? Do they only use him as a 5? How much play does he get comparative to Nick Richards? I think those two could be kind of a decision for the Suns to make as well going into the season. And then lastly, also looking at Mark Williams, depending on how his season looks, he is a restricted free agent. And as we saw the last offseason, that seems to be a difficult thing for those franchises and free agents to agree to a long-term deal. Out of the 4 free agents that we saw last year, only one of them got a deal that he was happy with, in being Josh Giddey. Cam Thomas had to take a qualifying offer. Quentin Grimes had to take a qualifying offer. And Jonathan Kuminga basically got a Band-Aid patch on his contract on the last day available from the Warriors to ultimately use him to be a tradable asset. So I think for the Suns to evaluate Mark Williams and see how he is as a rookie or as a player this year is going to be key, because if he's not living up to their expectations, they could use that contract as an asset to flip in this season if some of these younger players do look to stand out, so they don't have to deal with that as well. So those are the 4 players I would keep an eye on. I think everyone else kind of has a mainstay with the Suns or has to prove a little bit more for to be traded. But I feel like those 4 guys, Williams being probably the least likely out of them, has a chance to be moved by at least the deadline.
Well, and John Voida asks, what do you think the chances are of a Dylan Brooks move at the deadline, him being the most desirable asset?
That one I could see being interesting as well. Let me look up right now what Dylan Brooks' contract is currently, but I do know that the Suns do have a lot of value for Dylan Brooks. I could see him once again being a tradable asset for this Suns team at the deadline, but I do think if Ryan Dunn hasn't shown to be that prolific 3-and-D wing this year, that Brooks could at least stay for the end of this season to kind of bring out the best in that. Dunn's 3-point ability in the preseason hasn't been that great. Brooks had that one preseason game. I know it's preseason where he shot 100%, and last year shot his best from 3-point land. So if he can keep up those numbers and be a viable 3-point asset, I think it'd be a great finish for the Suns. He also, looking at his contract, has 2 years left on his deal, $21 million this year, $19 million next year. So I think if he were to be traded, it would be more likely at the offseason due to the fact that he'd be an expiring contract. It would be a little bit more valuable for those teams because they feel like they can give him that extension comparatively to maybe having him play on their team, maybe even rising even more and then bouncing for more money in the offseason after that.
Yeah, I guess I certainly see the value in him. I just don't think this Suns, unless they were overpaid significantly to trade him. Right now, I feel like the Suns are on a diet, and he is the vegetables and fruit that you need to have when you're trying to get healthy. And you can't really do half of a diet and then say, all right, back to the chocolate cake. If he's here to help with this alignment, and it seems like that's a big thing, to play more aggressive defense, to hustle, kind of all those intangibles that we've been just dying to see from anyone last couple of years. I feel like you need a steady dose, and that's at least one full season of that, because he certainly, already, and again, this is kind of more on the media side of things, it feels like he's already kind of left his print, on this franchise. He knows what he's being brought in to do, and that's get these guys to fight and show some of that hustle. And, Colin Gillespie, Villain Jr. announcement. And so, I think it would be hard to see it unless, again, it was like, oh, I can't believe this team is offering this much for Dillon Brooks.
Yeah, and that's how I kind of come into it too. I know that John just said that in the chat that they could get some good value for him, and probably a pick or two. And I think that would be great for the Phoenix Suns as well to maybe analyze kind of how they want to restructure their team and kind of go out for that next star to really maybe take that next chance, maybe using that Jalen Green contract with some of those picks to go out and get someone. I wouldn't necessarily know a name off the top of my head because who knows who's going to be available next offseason or who's really going to rise to the season to be a possible asset. But if the Suns were to use those contracts or use those picks to go out and get maybe a younger, better fit, then I would agree so. But I do think that Brooks in his career, I do believe he's only 30 at this point. He could still provide some solid defense and contention, especially if the Suns want to be a good quality team in 2 to 3 seasons. At 32, 33 years old, I could still him being a key part for a team, even if it is off the bench, which could still be valuable for the Suns if Ryan Dunn does grow into that starting small forward.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, this is going to date me a little bit, but are you familiar with a Keanu Reeves movie called The Replacements?
No, I am not.
Okay. Drop what you're doing later today and go rent that thing on Prime. It's probably like $3 now because it's like 20 plus years old. But it feels very much like this team is The Replacements. The quick synopsis of the deal is that basically the NFL, some players go on strike, and the Washington Sentinels, have these an overpriced quarterback and some other guys, and they all go on strike. They're not going to play anymore. And so they have to go out and hire basically free agents, and so they hire a coach, and he picks his own team, and he picks Shane Falco, played by Keanu Reeves, who was good in college, but he like blew it in the Sugar Bowl. They always reference that, and they get like a sumo wrestler to be like his offensive tackle, and they get 2 guys that were brothers and were drafted, but as soon as they got traded away from each other, they fell apart. And all these other guys, like one guy had to go to prison, but was an elite college athlete. Another guy was like a police officer, and he plays middle linebacker for him. Basically, even though the team is super clumsy, especially out of the gate, the fan base rallies behind them because they see they're trying, and they're trying to win games. And at the end, there's this great scene because the high-paid quarterback comes back and replaces Keanu Reeves for like a half, and he's throwing the ball out of bounds. He didn't like the look, and he's changing the plays, and he's not playing well with these young guys who are just trying to even middle-aged guys, middle-aged for their careers, trying to start a career or at least have some fun in the game. And the fan base just turns on that high-priced quarterback, and I'm like, again, it just reminds me of Kevin Durant just being the tweet going out, look at the vibes. And Kevin Durant's like, yeah, there's no expectations for the Suns, so it's easy to be relaxed. And, it just Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal were the the high-paid quarterback and players of the Sentinels, and now they're gone. They're still going to be, making money, but now there's people that are here that want to try to do something, and that's what's going to be kind of exciting to watch. So I definitely recommend you check out that movie. And yes, rest in peace, Gene Hackman played the head coach of that team.
I definitely will have to check that out. That sounds very interesting. A good football movie is always something I'm down to subscribe to, and kick on the couch, put on some popcorn, get some popcorn ready, and put on my slides and just relax. And honestly, with the Suns not starting the season until Wednesday, we have some time. We can easily get as many movies as we want. So Jake, I actually will be checking that out. So thank you for that. I appreciate that one.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a feel good movie. I'd say one of the better football sports movies too that are out there. I mean, obviously, it's not like Rudy. It's not based on a true story. And then don't get me started on that. Everything I found out that was an exaggeration on that deal. But no, well, let's see. We talked a little bit about predictions. I'm kind of right there with you. I think we could top out at 40 wins. I think it could be, if you remember the Goran Dragic, who was our coach then too? Was it I think we went 40 and 42, and we were like too good, and we were supposed to basically start tanking that year, but then they're like, oh shoot, do we try and try and compete a little bit? I think it was Bledsoe and Dragic, or was that before Bledsoe got there? But Hornacek, I think, was the coach at the time too, and we were just a little too competitive. So I could see us be that and be kind of, and that actually would be better this year because we don't have our own first round draft picks. So and try it. Hey, go on a deep playoff run, compete for a top. I'm here for it. If the guys just happen to be that good. But I could see us winning as many as 40. But I'm not going to be disappointed in this team if we win 30. If we come out of the gate though and we win 18 games in the whole season, then I'm going to be like, okay, this is truly a hard reset, and we're going to have to take a look at that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that a lot of the outside noise from the offseason is very kind of hindering on how people see the Suns growing. But I feel like with all those losses, not all the people are seeing the additions that are kind of coming in that are vital for both sides of the floor, as we've seen and discussed, where the Suns really only focused on one side. So I could see that. I will agree with you if they're 18 wins, 20 wins, something sort of that. I do think it's kind of something to reflect on, saying, all right, this is a hard reset. Maybe that's where you evaluate your Devin Booker stance and how you feel about doing a potential trade with that. If you're the Phoenix Suns, maybe not this offseason, but the next offseason or something like that, because I think this year is very indicative of showing not only Devin Booker and the fans that you guys can be something good, but also being effective on both sides as well, and kind of showing both of those things for the fans and to the team as well, so that they can kind of see this path of growth. They've seen teams like the Thunder, the Pacers, the Spurs, other teams kind of build up through the draft and build up through this young talent. And I'm hoping the Suns can kind of see that blueprint kind of going into this year with kind of the reinforcements that they do have.
Yeah. This is kind of a random one, but it looks like Ryan Dunn's going to be starting with Dylan Brooks. That's going to be our forwards. As that it continues throughout the season, we'll see, if that maintains. But, that could be a very elite defensive, wing system. But are you surprised we haven't had more Brooks and Dunn references, like from the country duo, Brooks and Dunn?
Yeah, I mean,
little Sun, Scoot, and Boogie. We might have to do some drops. We might have to put some stuff together.
We're going to have to, over this next couple of weeks leading up to the season, we're going to have to get some creative stuff definitely going. I'm excited to see that wing duo really work. I know it's been talked about through this offseason, kind of who's going to play the 4, who's going to play the 3. I think it's kind of going to be virtually interchangeable for both of these guys here. I really do like the length and size that Dunn has to be able to play that 4, but I do like the ability of Brooks having that kind of wider frame and going up against some bigger defenders and bigger forwards and post players for him to be able to utilize that for his advantage as well. Ultimately, though, the Brooks and Dunn stuff, I will agree we need to see more of.
Yeah. I think how I would take it is that Ryan's going to guard some of the bigger 4s, but if an offense, like maybe with has really talented wings that can actually kind of take the ball, like a Kevin Durant, for example, then I think you're going to see like a Brooks on them. He's going to take more of the ball handler wings, whereas Dunn might take some more of the just the bigger body wings out of the gate. But that's just kind of my theory on it.
I would agree. I think that they're going to be a very fun interchangeable duo for this team, and I think the main key as well to see with them is when one of them is replaced, how much of that defense is kind of taken out of this team. Obviously, they are kind of the main initiators on the defensive end within this starting lineup. So replacing them with either another guard, maybe a Grayson Allen once Jalen Green is in the starting lineup, or maybe replacing them with a Royce O'Neal or Nigel Hayes-Davis, I think is, or maybe even an Oso Godaro going into that double big lineup is ultimately going to show the creativity, but also the flexibility of this team, which I also didn't think we've seen in past years with their kind of like rigid depth charts.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to see if we run out at some point a Booker, O'Neal, Brooks, Dunn, and like Malawatcher Williams lineup where it's just going to seem like there's going to be a lot of tough ways to get through that type of defensive group, and so it'd be interesting to see how teams would react to that because we do have some really solid defenders, I think, going into it.
I would definitely agree. A lot better than we had last season. I know I kind of touched on it earlier, but guys like Cody Martin were the, saving grace for the Phoenix Suns last year at the end of the season as that connective wing. And no disrespect to Cody Martin. He was a great player. He played fantastic with the Phoenix Suns. But if that's what we were saying is our best defender, then clearly we had an issue on that side of the ball and needed to address that. And I'm glad that the Suns went ahead and did that this offseason.
What happened to Cody Martin? Do you know?
He's still a free agent at the moment, so he is currently just sitting at home waiting for a call to get.
Oh gosh, yeah. Let's go into let's move to wrap it up and talk real quick. The offseason is officially over and the 2024-2025 season's over. Any big surprises that you had or I guess over the last few months? I mean, we've been relatively quiet, and I think, speaking for myself at least, a lot of things have been happening for me. Like I'm moving to a new house and I started a new job and I got married. So very busy year for me. But I guess it all came kind of at a perfect time because after the Durant trade and the decision to waive and eventually stretch, Beal, it was underwhelming, and maybe that's for the best, but it just the offseason. I missed the offseason, where's random good player going to go? We won't find out until maybe a couple days before the 4th of July, and then the excitement and everyone wanted to go run podcasts. And this was more like, I feel like people were on Kuminga watch for about a month and a half just because they wanted something to do.
Yeah, I will say Shams hyped up this offseason to be the best offseason ever, and I will say
that was a bit of a
it
miss.
did not live up to those expectations on my end. Maybe the first 2 weeks were the most exciting that we got to see, but like you stated, with how the new offseason kind of works, it's not really suitable for top players to go into free agency. It's just more better for the player and for the team to kind of just trade him on that contracts. And obviously when we get to trades and player empowerment and they get the ultimate decision, it kind of hinders things, as we ultimately saw with the Durant trade this offseason. It was clear that if Durant was willing to go to another place, maybe Toronto or Minnesota, that the Suns could have gotten a little bit of a better package. But with that being said, I will agree that the offseason was very dry for a majority of it. I mean, I would say with you being busy those last couple of months, you didn't really miss much of anything because, like you stated, we were just all waiting for Jonathan Kuminga situation. There were some rumors about the Suns kind of earlier on in the offseason, but then that fizzled out. There was no talk about that. And then it ultimately was just kind of waiting on these restricted free agents to see if they were to sign somewhere else, what other moves that would trigger across the league. Unfortunately, we didn't really see that. Yesterday was a big day with all the Exhibit 10 waivers and two-way waivings and stuff like that, with teams trimming down their roster to get the actuality of their teams. But for the Suns, it was basically kind of set in stone. I guess we could talk a little bit about the Jared Butler and Jordan Goodwin kind of battle that happened, as Jared Butler did get waived by the Phoenix Suns yesterday. I do think that was the right decision by the Phoenix Suns. I think Goodwin plays that defensive guard role and playmaker that the Suns do still need in that rotation, something that they lack within their guard group with Booker, Gillespie, Grayson Allen and Jalen Green at this very moment. I think Butler would have been a little too redundant in being that offensive guard, sharing some of those complexities that those guys did have above him. But also, I do think he could have been a valuable tertiary guard if the Suns wanted to keep him as that 15th roster spot. I know John said that they had the ability to have Goodwin's contract non-guaranteed till January, so they could have had that competition battle going on a little bit in the season, specifically with Jalen Green being out and with Jared Butler putting up that 35-point performance with 0 turnovers and 9 assists in their final preseason game. I thought he warranted to be able to get that last roster spot. I'm hoping for the best for Butler, that he is able to find a spot in the league, because as someone that has watched him on Washington competing on a two-way and playing last season over in Philly, I do think he's deserved of a spot. Maybe it's a low-end rotational spot, kind of a competing job, but I do think he still has some qualities to be an NBA player, and hopefully we get to see that through the season as well. But it is, as sad as it is to say, to let go of Jared Butler, I do think bringing in Jordan Goodwin was the smart decision, but I do think the Suns should have kept both.
Yeah, it's I can kind of go either way on it. As exciting as it was to see him just absolutely ball out in a preseason game. I was watching, Suns Worldwide say that he had to apologize, and he had to, and he got a response, and he was very excited about it, and basically getting to apologize to Butler and saying that, oh, you definitely are a great player. But at the same time, I sit back and I think of. Here's a name to throw back at. Do you remember Alec Peters? No. Well, Alec Peters, in his rookie season with the Phoenix Suns, his very last game of the season, scored 36 points, including a franchise record high 8 3-pointers for the rookie. He was like a 6'9" big. Let's see. I think he was second round draft, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, in 2017, he was selected as the 54th pick by the Suns. So he balled out, had a fantastic last game. I believe he's been in Russia or other international leagues ever since. So as much as I would have wanted to see, as much as you could say, oh, how exciting would it be to see him develop further or something like that. I mean, some of these guys can just have an absolutely phenomenal game. I remember reading an article once that Bo Outlaw, when he was on the Suns roster in the early 7 seconds or less days, like played not a summer league game, but basically like I don't even know how to describe it, an official pickup game or something like that. It was like an exhibition game, and he had like 56 points. I'm like, Bo Outlaw doesn't even shoot. How is he doing this? So, like, it's just possible that they're all elite talents. When we see a guy that's like, oh, he only gets like 4 points a game, we also know that they would beat us like 100-2, and any other type of game. So I always have to remind myself of that. So it was great to see Butler ball out. Hope he does well. But I agree with you, Jordan Goodwin, more of a defensive pest. Let's lean into that. Let's see where it goes. We've had one run with him, and he's kind of improved a little bit since then, and we'll see where it goes. But I met Bo Outlaw at a Best Buy. I would not recognize Bo Outlaw unless he's wearing the goggles, to be honest with you at this point. Like, those goggles were so iconic. It's kind of like Elliot Perry and his socks. So there's just certain things that you look for when you're recognizing people. But, hey, I'm excited to get back into the podcasting mood. Hopefully we'll be back next Saturday. I'm actually moving officially in a couple of weeks. So everything's still a little under construction. We will try and figure out why my camera didn't work on the laptop. I usually go from a desktop. So that could be the reason why I'm just not set up. And then, we are kind of a joint studioing. And I did read the comments, Mr. Voida. I did try and switch the style, and it wouldn't take during the middle of a podcast. So I was trying to pay attention, but hopefully we'll get a little bit more Suns Planet podcasting imagery and logoing next time. But we appreciate the Fanning the Flames guys for letting us promote them at the beginning of the show.
Of course.
And go check them out if you haven't, because as I also mentioned in the article, it is such a wave of so says Jay's optimism. Hey, this team could win it all, to Dan saying, why do we ever talk? Let's go talk about this terrible team. And then, Paul saying, I just hope we can rebuild smartly and do it very wisely. So that's all I got. Bruce, where can the folks find you?
So you can find me over on Bright Side of the Sun, where I do my writing over there. And you can also find me on YouTube as well, doing my own channel over on Swish City, where I am currently breaking down every single team going into the season. Obviously, season starts just in a couple of days, so there still are some videos that do have to come out for some of the top teams. But over on that channel, we'll be talking all NBA. So if you enjoy my breakdowns, enjoy my commentary, you can go check me out on YouTube over there, where you can get basically everything NBA, and obviously some Sun stuff. If they do good or bad throughout the season, we'll definitely be talking about them. But yeah, excited to start the season off soon. And yeah, we'll be having some great podcasts, me, Jake, and Kevin here, breaking down the team, going over the Phoenix Suns in general, and then yeah, getting some more creative drops as well for the season, because those are going to be super fun to have for the fun team that I think we're going to be at least seeing comparative to last year, where we hop on Saturdays and go, damn, we went 1-4 this week. We're going to have a lot better outcomes, I think.
Yeah, it's weird to say I'm excited for, those those, oh, we went 1-2 this week. Hey, but we had fun doing it,
Yeah, exactly. It's not, oh damn, we went 1-3, but we should have went 3-1 because we choked all those games in the second half.
Exactly.
It's just going to be a breath of fresh air, which I stated on Twitter, which is just going to be, I think, nice for everyone attending the games, watching the games on TV, wherever you are. I think this year, as a Phoenix Suns fan, even though the record might not be resemblant of a good team, I think you're going to feel a lot better about the team you see in the purple and orange this season comparative to last.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, I think that's what most fan bases want. It's the reason why Heat fans continue to get excited for Heat culture, even though, I saw Kendrick Perkins predict that they're not even close to competitive, and that Bam Adebayo is going to be traded at the trade deadline. But I tell you what, one, I think they could surprise, but two, I think the fans are just always bought in because they love that kind of buying into the Heat culture and seeing kind of that play out. And I'm hoping that's what we can develop here, is a little bit of a Suns culture. I like the idea of calling it the morgue. Welcome to the morgue arena. It sounds a little bit more intimidating. Can you survive the morgue when you have to face off against Brooks and Dunn? Can you Sun, Scoot, and Boogie? Yeah, we're going to have to put some things together on this for sure. But it should be a good one. Kevin was not able to join us today. He meant to join us, but then he got he had to take the fam to the beach, and then a 5-hour drive back. So he's still stuck in Filipino traffic, and we welcome him back on a future episode. But just wanted to let everyone know where Kev was. Appreciate you being here. You follow me at Fallen Founder, and I've now written 2 articles on Bright Side of the Sun. Granted, it took like 4 months to do both, to do them, but hey, you can actually apparently read my stuff there, and you'll hopefully be seeing us a lot more consistently. Back again every Saturday, the old Sun solar panel timeline. So we'll see you guys then, and appreciate you stopping by. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Voida, and everyone else that's listening to this later. And we'll talk to you guys then.